March 17, 1943. Hampton Roads, Virginia. A gray morning clings to the Atlantic coast, mist rising from the water as the Liberty ship docks against the pier. Chains rattle, anchors groan, and boots thud against steel decks. On board are nearly 1,000 German prisoners of war captured in the Tunisian campaign. Their uniforms are worn thin, desert dust still caught in seams, but their eyes are sharp, restless, scanning the horizon as the hatches open. Oberleutnant Karl-Heinz Langer, who once commanded a platoon of Panzer Grenadiers, scribbles in his battered field diary, noting the size of the cranes that hover above the pier. He is a trained observer, taught to measure battlefield landscapes, but nothing in his manual ever told him how to process this. The scene unfolding is not just a port, it is an engine the size of a nation, pistons firing in unison. Steam bursts from dockside pipes, hissing into the damp air. Massive cranes pivot with mechanical precision, lifting cargo containers stacked with munitions, while railway cars wait below like a steel centipede stretching inland. The prisoners step onto American soil, guarded by MPs, their boots crunching gravel and salt crystals. The first image that hits them is not barbed wire or prison camp towers. It is movement, constant, thunderous, organized motion. A convoy of flat cars clatters past on parallel tracks, each loaded with Sherman tanks so new the paint gleams under the weak sun. The POWs blink, unsure if these are real combat machines or parade dummies meant to intimidate. The tanks are not hidden in depots or covered in tarps. They are displayed in plain sight, rolling openly through the port, as if mass production itself were a weapon to be flaunted. Engines hum in unison, synchronized like pistons inside a colossal gearbox. The ground vibrates faintly as locomotives push the convoys forward. German prisoners murmur among themselves. Some mutter that these Shermans must be empty shells, hollow frames for propaganda. Others remain silent, eyes fixed, tallying with soldiers' instinct. 1 tank, 2, 10, 20. The numbers stretch too far for comfort. Karl-Heinz notes again in his diary, "So many, freshly painted, ready for war. At home, a single Panzer requires weeks of repair. Here they seem to produce them by the hour." His handwriting is sharp, pressed into the page, as though carving proof into paper. The Americans make no speeches, no show of military bands. Their demonstration is mathematical, not theatrical. Every turn of the wheel, every whistle of the locomotive communicates a simple truth. Resources are endless here. Where the Reich has ration cards, scrap drives, and shortages, the United States has warehouses stacked like fortresses and trains that never stop moving. Behind this spectacle lies an industrial equation too vast for many prisoners to comprehend. In 1942, the United States had produced over 67 million tons of steel, more than Germany, Italy, and Japan combined in that same year. Each ton can be converted into 200 rifle barrels, or the hull plating for an amphibious landing craft, or the armor sheets for a tank turret. Numbers like these are not abstractions, they are physical manifestations of energy transformed into weapons. If a single division requires 5,000 tons of supplies per week to stay operational in the field, then America's steel output in a single month could sustain dozens of divisions indefinitely. The gears do not just turn, they multiply. To the German soldiers staring across the dockyard, this arithmetic is unfamiliar terrain. Their war had been measured in kilometers advanced, towns taken, or tanks destroyed. Here, the war is measured in furnaces, in rolling mills, in the speed of assembly lines. A freight train loaded with tanks is not just transport, it is proof of depth. Behind every visible Sherman lies the shadow of 10 more in final assembly, and behind those, hundreds of foundries pouring metal day and night. A corporal from Rommel's Africa Corps whispers to his comrade that perhaps these convoys are staged only for their arrival, a theater trick to break morale. But even as he speaks, another train screams by, this one burdened with artillery pieces, barrels swaddled in protective grease. The men count silently, their numbers colliding with disbelief. If this is theater, then the stage is continental in size, the actors made of iron, the script written in production quotas. The smell is inescapable. Oil, coal smoke, and the acrid tang of hot steel drift over the piers. It stings the nostrils of men used to the scent of cordite and gasoline. Here the smell does not signal destruction, but creation. Factories, unseen but felt, are nearby, exhaling their output onto the rails. To German eyes, it is a reminder that their homeland's industry is under constant bombardment, struggling to replace lost machines, where American industry seems to surge without interruption. Simple math crushes optimism. A Panzer IV weighs about 25 tons. An American M4 Sherman weighs 30 tons. If the U.S. steel industry alone produces tens of millions of tons in a year, then every month brings enough raw material for thousands of Shermans. The German economy, strained and stripped by years of war, could not match this equation, even with slave labor and forced requisition from occupied lands. The numbers are mechanical truths, as immutable as gear ratios in an engine. Karl-Heinz closes his diary, pocketing it before the guards notice. He looks back once more at the endless freight trains, the cranes swinging in arcs, and the workers shouting commands in clipped English. He realizes that while Germany fights to hold deserts and steppes, America fights in factories, rail yards, and ship basins, places where battles are invisible but decisive. What he has witnessed in this single morning is not a spectacle meant for him. It is routine, and routine on this scale is more terrifying than any battlefield surprise. The prisoners are marched toward waiting trucks, their eyes lingering on the convoys until distance swallows the last gleam of painted steel. The docks fall behind them, but the memory imprints like a mechanical stamp pressed into soft metal. They will remember the rhythm of engines, the scream of wheels, and the endless flow of machines. For the first time, they begin to understand that the war is not decided by the courage of soldiers alone. It is decided by the mass and motion of industry, a battlefield measured not in miles, but in tons. The convoy moves inland, carrying the prisoners by guarded rail. At each junction, the Germans see more of the vast machine that is America at war. Karl-Heinz Langer presses against the barred window of his rail car, staring at a passing yard where freight trains couple and uncouple with the precision of gears meshing in an enormous clock. Boxcars slide across switching tracks, locomotives belch steam, whistles cut the night. It is not chaos but choreography, a ballet of steel. He recognizes something his instructors in Germany never explained. Wars are not won only with rifles, but with timetables. The evidence mounts with each mile. In Michigan, assembly lines stretch further than the eye can follow. At Willow Run, once farmland, a factory now sprawls across 3.5 million square feet, its hangar-like roof swallowing the horizon. Inside, bomber fuselages crawl forward in segmented stages, riveters hammering in a syncopated rhythm. Sparks rain like meteors across the floor. A single aircraft grows piece by piece, and before one reaches the end of the line, another takes its place. In Germany, workers repair the same Panzer chassis again and again. Here, an entirely new B-24 Liberator emerges every 63 minutes. Karl-Heinz cannot comprehend the tempo. To him, it feels as if America's industry has become an engine running beyond red line, yet not braking. Technically, the scale is unprecedented. The Victory program, drafted in 1941 and expanded in 42, set goals so massive they bordered on absurd. 85,000 tanks, more than 100,000 aircraft, and millions of small arms in just a few years. German intelligence reports, captured after the war, show estimates that the Americans could produce perhaps half that before collapsing under shortages. The reality would exceed even Washington's most ambitious projections. By late 1943, production figures rolled in like barrage reports, an average of 5,000 aircraft a month, 700 tanks, and tens of thousands of trucks. These were not propaganda numbers, they were receipts stamped and logged by the War Production Board. For the prisoners traveling deeper into America, each sighting is a blow heavier than artillery. They see highways thick with convoys of olive-drab trucks. They glimpse shipyards in Richmond and Baltimore, cranes lifting hull plates into place with movements so fast it seems the ships rise from the water fully armed. Every image is a briefing without words, a coded message in plain sight. The arsenal is infinite. Karl Heinz wonders if his homeland's leaders ever truly understood what they had provoked. The tempo of assembly is not just about speed, it is about precision. At Willow Run, workers, many of them women who had never handled tools before the war, stand along conveyor lines as if part of the machinery itself. Each rivet driven, each cable fastened is a cog turning in a system designed for relentless motion. Ford engineers designed the line with mathematical rigor. Parts arrive on a timed sequence, subassemblies slot into place, defects are flagged instantly and corrected without halting the flow. The system resembles an engine where every piston, crankshaft, and gear meshes without pause. The Germans, trained in craftsmanship, believe in quality born of skilled hands. What they do not realize is that quantity, when perfected by design, becomes quality in itself. 10 Shermans may be lost for every Tiger destroyed, but 20 more arrive to replace them within weeks. On a cold March morning, Karl Heinz and his fellow prisoners arrive in the Midwest, their train slowed by traffic along the main freight arteries. They see rail sidings lined with flat cars, not just carrying tanks, but artillery, jeeps, and crates stamped with markings for overseas shipment. Some cars stretch with aircraft wings wrapped in protective canvas, bound for assembly depots. The rhythm of motion never ceases. Steel wheels screech, air brakes hiss, locomotives pound like heartbeats amplified to the scale of a nation. The first contact comes not with bullets, but with the sight of convoys so long they vanish into the distance. Prisoners press their faces against the rail slats, craning to see where the line ends, but there is no end in sight. The sheer scale triggers disbelief. A Feldwebel mutters that perhaps the Americans are moving the same trains in circles to fool them, but as the journey continues, new convoys appear, different cargoes, different markings, all heading east. These are not parades staged for prisoners. They are arteries feeding the lifeblood of war towards Atlantic ports. The sensory overload is relentless. Diesel exhaust burns the nostrils, coal smoke lingers on the tongue, and the constant metallic screech of wheels grinds at the ears. The German soldiers, hardened by desert campaigns and Russian winters, feel an unfamiliar sensation: smallness. In Africa, they were the hammer striking lightly defended forces. Here they are ants, standing beside a machine that does not notice their presence. From a technical lens, the explanation is simple but devastating. America's rail system is the circulatory system of war. By 1943, the U.S. railroads were hauling nearly 700 billion ton-miles of freight annually, dwarfing the Reichsbahn's strained capacity. Each train could move hundreds of vehicles, thousands of tons of munitions across continental distances in days. Unlike Germany, where Allied bombers hammered bridges and yards nightly, the American heartland remained untouched. No bombs fell on Willow Run, no incendiaries burned Detroit's factories. Production continued uninterrupted, like gears turning inside a sealed gearbox, impervious to outside strikes. The prisoners are marched off the train at last, escorted into barbed wire camps set up far from cities. Yet even within the camps, the proof continues. They hear distant horns of locomotives at night, convoys grinding down nearby highways, planes droning overhead in endless practice flights. Karl Heinz writes in his diary again, We are prisoners of more than guards. We are prisoners of this machine that never stops. What they have witnessed in these days of travel is not a battlefield, but an ecosystem. A continent repurposed, stripped of civilian indulgence, and retooled for war. From steel foundries to automobile plants, from rail hubs to shipyards, everything has been bent into a single function. The POWs came expecting a soft America of jazz and movies, a place lacking the discipline of Europe. Instead, they encountered the relentless drive of a nation that has discovered its strength lies not in old empires, but in mass, motion, and the unbreakable rhythm of production.